Journalist William Stead was traveling on board the Titanic. Sitting with other travelers in the smoking lounge, Stead told a terrifying story about a cursed mummy in the British Museum, and added mysteriously that he believed the ship was now doomed. After the ship sank and Stead died along with thousands of others, one of the survivors told the story of the mummy in an interview with an American newspaper. It was called the Mummy of Misfortune. The Mummy of Misfortunes is a real artifact. It is displayed in a display case in room 62 of the British Museum with the identification number 22542. It measures 1 meter 62 centimeters, is painted in bright colors and covered with hieroglyphic inscriptions. It depicts a woman wearing a wig and a wide necklace. What is most curious are the arms, which are strangely positioned, rising horizontally from the chest with the palms outward. The artifact dates back to the end of the 21st Dynasty, which is 950 to 900 BC. But why did it have such a terrible name? It seems that this priestess, who has a bad habit of wandering around the museum at night, is credited with 1,001 misfortunes that have befallen her successive owners, as well as those who have tried to tell the story of her malice, including intrepid reporters. Thomas Douglas Murray, a member of the group of English travelers who visited Thebes between 1860 and 1870, acquired the artifact from grave robbers. The return to London with the artifact was difficult. Both Murray and his companions experienced various disasters. One went into the desert and never reappeared, another lost an arm when a servant accidentally shot him. His arm was so badly injured that it had to be amputated. A third returned home to find that the bank where all his savings were kept had gone bankrupt. A fourth became seriously ill, lost his job, and was forced to beg on the street. Nevertheless, the mummy made its way to England, causing further misfortune along the way, where it was bought by a London businessman. After 3 members of his family were injured in a road accident and his house was damaged by fire, the businessman donated it to the British Museum. As the mummy was being unloaded from a lorry in the museum courtyard, the lorry suddenly reversed and hit a passerby. Then, as 2 workers were lifting the mummy up a ladder, one fell and broke his leg. The other, apparently in perfect health, inexplicably died 2 days later. At the museum, the mummy continued to cause disasters, such as tourists fainting. The museum's night watchman often heard the frantic hammering and sobbing coming from the coffin. One watchman died on duty, causing the other watchman to want to quit. The cleaners also refused to go near the mummy. Long before the mummy arrived at the British Museum, its reputation had leaked out into British private society. While museum curators generally scoffed at the supposed curse, men at soirees, dinner parties and clubs told stories of its powers. But it wasn't until 1904 that the general public caught a whiff of the curse. That year, a brash, ambitious young journalist named Bertram Fletcher Robinson published a front-page article in the Daily Express titled "The Priestess of Death," about the supposedly haunted mummy. He wrote, "There is no doubt that the Egyptians had powers which we in the 20th century can laugh at but never understand." 3 years later, Robinson died suddenly of a fever, and his friends immediately thought of the mummy's curse. "The very last time I saw him he told me a remarkable story about a mummy that had caused the death of everyone connected with it," wrote Archibald Marshall, an English writer and journalist. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, recalled that he had warned Robinson not to mess with the mummy. "I warned Mr. Robinson not to mess with the mummy in the British Museum," he wrote. "He persisted, and his death came. I told him he was tempting fate by pursuing his inquiries, but he was fascinated and would not be deterred." Conan Doyle even went so far as to point out that if the mummy killed anyone, the manner in which it did so would be the manifestation of the disease. "The immediate cause of death was typhoid fever," he wrote, "but that was how the elementals guarding the mummy might act." Robinson was not the only suspected victim. The list of stories about the mummy's influence began to grow. People who drew the mummy had mysterious accidents, a woman fell down the stairs, a captain suffered financial ruin, a psychic claimed the mummy haunted him for weeks. And the most fascinating story surrounding the item is the one that claims the artifact was the cause of the sinking of the Titanic, the crown jewel of the White Star Shipping Company, which sank in the North Atlantic on April 12, 1912. However, Stead's presence on the Titanic and his story of the cursed mummy were confused and spliced together by the press. Others picked up on the story and inadvertently created one of the darkest and most fascinating myths surrounding the Titanic. There is no record of the mummy of Misfortune being among the ship's cargo, and no other passengers recalled seeing it during the evacuation. The artifact has not left the British Museum since it was delivered there around 1889. But it is not a mummy at all, just the top lid of a sarcophagus. Now think about what all this means. Perhaps it is just a beautiful legend. But for some reason it has a lot of strange coincidences.